Welcome, everybody. This is Avoiding the Addiction Affliction, brought to you by Westwards Consulting and the Kenosha County Substance Use Disorder Coalition. I'm Mike McGowan. You know, it's not trite to say that some people see challenges as obstacles and others see them as opportunities. Katy Arvidson was 10 years old when she was diagnosed with Pompe disease. In spite of that diagnosis, she kept going and eventually obtained her master's degree in social work. She is now a retired licensed clinical social worker and advocate for persons who experience disabilities and mental health challenges. She recently joined the Advisory Council for the Alaska Disability Law Center, where she focuses on the overlap of disabilities and mental health. And since this is the beginning of Mental Health Month, I thought it would be a great opportunity to have Katy on. She is also currently Ms. Wheelchair Alaska, embracing a platform of not just surviving, but thriving, and will be competing, I believe, this summer in Ohio for the national competition. We're going to talk about her story and work today. Welcome, Katy.
Thank you.
Okay, I had to look it up, so I'm sure I'm not the only one. Start us off by telling us what Pompe disease is. I got that right. I pronounced it right, right?
You did. Yeah, Pompey's disease. This is a very interesting fact. I didn't know this till a few days ago. He was in the Netherlands, Dr. Pompey, who discovered the disease, and he died during World War II protecting Jewish people,
Mm.
which is a pretty incredible story. Anyway, so Pompey's disease, the way I describe it best, it's a rare muscular dystrophy. In the United States, there's only about 5,000 of us total. And essentially what happens is I'm missing an enzyme. My body does not produce an enzyme that it should. And so I'm not able to break down complex sugars. And all of that material builds up in my muscle tissue and wastes the
Mm.
muscle tissue. It's progressive, but everybody has a very different timeline depending on how much enzyme your body produces. So in the infantile form, it used to be that they didn't produce any enzyme and they would have died within a couple of years. It would have impacted their heart. Thankfully, I don't have any impact in my heart. And so I have more of what's called the juvenile form. So I produce more than the babies. But then there's also like adults who are like well past midlife in their 50s and 60s who are just being diagnosed.
Mm.
Like they didn't start having symptoms until their 50s. So it's a very wide sort of range around how devastating Pompey's disease can just be to your body, if that
You,
makes sense.
yeah, I was reading an article about you, and it said that when you were in school, that you knew, oh, here we go, because you were having difficulty managing stairs. So, did you like know that eventually you'd end up in a chair? And if so, what does that do to your psyche?
And that's a really good question. I didn't know. There was so little information when I was diagnosed, like no information. I got the diagnosis, and the doctor said, well, good luck. You probably won't live to see adulthood, but
Wow, wow.
there was no treatment, there was no information, just there was nothing at that time. And so I, grew up like every kid does, kind of normally through high school. And then around 20 years old, when I was in college, I'm all over campus. I'm carrying my backpack around. I'm parking in the parking lot, have to go up this huge set of giant stairs to get to my classes. And I just started not being able to get up those stairs, like exhausted. Like when you get to the top of the stairs, I can't pick up my legs anymore.
Wow.
And that's when it kind of clicked like, oh, this is real. Like I've known it for most of my life, but I just didn't, it just wasn't a part of my life until then. And still, even then, you don't know how I didn't know how it was going to end up. I didn't know how I would progress. I didn't know if it would go slowly or quickly. I didn't know I would end up in a wheelchair or needing the other aids that I use. So it just sort of happens. It just evolves over time. And it's sort of like continual losses that you
Mm.
just get
Mhm.
used to, like grief after grief after grief of loss. I think that's kind of the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it, actually. Well, you said you didn't know much about it, but apparently neither did the doctors. You got some advice that was bad, right?
I did. Yeah, I think they were thinking like, I've got childhood diabetes or something. They told me to suck on some hard candy, which is complex sugar, when I'm feeling tired. And it was so unknown back then. And I do think one of the big impacts it had on my life is I've always been more in touch with my own mortality.
Hmm.
I've always had this thing looming over my head. Like, I've got this disease. I don't know what it's going to be like, but I know I have it. And my sense of mission and purpose in my life has been driven by that.
Does that have something to do with what you majored in college?
It doesn't really. I went to college liberal arts school. I really like psychology. I took
Mm.
a introductory class. I really liked it. And so I said, okay, I want to major in psychology, not really knowing where that would lead, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed learning about it. And then I started working at a home for children who were in the foster care system and didn't have foster care placement. And I loved those kids so much. That was why I decided to go into social work.
Mm.
Just the to see what those kids were going through was heartbreaking. But I love developing relationships with them and helping them think through the hard parts of their life and being able to comfort them in some ways and cheer them on and give them a safe place.
How did you do all this? Because as you're going to school, as you're working, I also read that you were doing these. How often were you going to New York from Alaska for treatment, right?
Yeah, not until after it was about my mid 20s. So I had graduated college, graduated middle or graduate school, and my body was slowly deteriorating, but not to the point where I couldn't function, right? I started using a cane at some point. And then in my mid 20s, after my husband Josh and I got married, they started the first clinical trial for a drug. It's essentially an enzyme replacement treatment, and it pumps the enzyme into my body and it slows the progression of the disease down. That clinical trial started after we had moved back to Alaska. And so I was flying every 2 weeks from Alaska to New York City to get this treatment. It was terrible. It,
Can't, I think people who make that trip once a year would say that.
I can't begin to describe how overwhelming it was. Like I just put my head down and I kept moving.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's where I was going.
Yeah, I was working still. I bring my laptop along and work on the plane and get my treatment and come back home. It was a sort of a 3 day deal. I'd fly to New York City, which would be all day. I'd get there at like 2 or 3 in the morning, right? They'd pump the enzyme into me and I'd come home the next day and go back to work. How do I describe it? It was like I was on a continual 2 week loop. It was consistent, it was a routine. I had a routine, but it was so overwhelming. It was like I'd travel, I'd come home, I'd wash my clothes, I'd go to work, I'd pack my bag, I'd travel, I'd come home, I'd wash my clothes. Like there wasn't, for me, the future disappeared. It was just, I have to put my head down and get through this.
How'd you cope?
Not well, honestly. It was really hard on our marriage.
Yeah, I bet.
Um, we hadn't been married very long, maybe 2 or 3 years before I started this clinical trial. It was really hard on me personally, just emotionally. There were actually a couple things that helped me get through it. I was able to bring a companion with me on these trips. And so I started inviting young women that I worked with or I knew through church. And like they grew up in Alaska, right? They've never been to New York City. And their joy and their excitement about getting to go to New York City with me filled my cup. Like they would get in, they're lining up like, when can we go, when can we go? And so that part of it helped so much. And we would we'd save our per diems and buy the cheap tickets to a Broadway play after I got my infusion and go out for dinner. And that part of it was great. I mean, New York has such a buzz, right? The energy is so exciting there. And so that part filled my cup.
Is it
Um,
same buzz as where you're in Fairbanks? Is that right?
oh my gosh, no. No, it's so slow up here. Like
Really?
the rhythm is not like a city at all. It's just chill. Yeah,
Well, I have to ask you, did the infusions work?
I think it did. It's not a cure, it's a treatment, but it slowed the progression down, I believe. I'm not sure I would be alive if I hadn't had the treatment.
Do you still do them?
Yes. Yep. 20 years later, every 2 weeks. But I do it in Alaska now.
Oh, all right, all right. You just saw
Yeah.
my reaction. I'm like,
No, no,
if
no,
you're
no.
still flying 20 years later every 2 weeks to New York.
Oh my gosh, no. No, I did that about 5 years and then they were able to bring the treatment up to Alaska for
Well,
me.
thank
So,
goodness. That's great.
oh yes.
You were
It's
telling
so
me off the air that you also coped in a not the healthiest way too. You started using some substances to be able to get through.
I did. I started drinking alcohol. I was flying so
That can't
often.
be good, right?
I was bumped up into first class almost every flight, and they serve free alcohol.
Huh.
And so I'd be on the plane and I'd have a glass of wine and then two glasses of wine and then three glasses of wine. And then I started drinking at home. And it's it's complicated. It
Mm.
helped me get through, but it also dulled me in a sense
All the way around, not
all the
just
way around.
right. So
Yeah,
that had to take a toll on your work, your optimism, your marriage again.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, all of it. And then I also, in combination with alcohol, and this part was truly terrible, I had a doctor prescribe a benzodiazepine,
Yeah, I was waiting for that.
and I got addicted to that too. And, like I'm a social worker, I should know better, right? But I was in so much pain.
Yeah.
I'm still fighting to walk, like falling and getting concussions, and it hurt so bad. And I'm like, I'm going to walk as long as I possibly can. And that benzodiazepine in combination with the alcohol was, I, I was a zombie. It, it was, it was horrible. I was blacking out every night. I'd wake up in the morning and I'd be like, oh no, did I yell at Josh again? Did I
Mm.
scream at him again? And I was blacking out every night. Like I could not remember what happened the night before.
How did you turn
Just
that
no
around?
memory. Oh man, this is a great part of my story. COVID hit. Yeah,
God bless COVID.
it was COVID. Thank you, COVID. Yeah, no, what happened is mental health became available through distance delivery. I couldn't get mental health treatment because I was in a wheelchair and I couldn't drive anymore. And nobody in my community in Eagle River, it's close to Anchorage, about a 30-minute drive to Anchorage, but nobody in my community would take Medicare. Like there were literally no therapists here. And I couldn't get to see a therapist. And COVID hit, and we started being able to get mental health treatment through Zoom. And that I turned it around.
Good for
Yeah.
you. I saw a couple of social media posts that you did that some people have lumped everybody, some people in the government, into a fairly disgusting category.
Yeah, I'm a social worker. It hurt and it ticked me off, to be honest. People say the stupidest things, the
Yeah.
cruelest things, I think, on the internet. But yeah, somebody said basically he was laughing about federal programming being slashed for people who depend on our social safety net, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, TANF, like everything. And so it essentially was saying people who need that help are parasites. That was the word that was used, parasites. And yeah, not cool. Not
Yeah.
cool. So part of what I'm doing as Miss Wheelchair Alaska USA is I'm trying to put out information about disability, how it impacts our mental health, but also provide like a message of hope, right? Like, yep, we may be in wheelchairs, but we can still contribute to our society. We still have things to say. We still have things we want to do with our lives. And if you haven't had the experience of trying to live in a wheelchair, most people just aren't aware of the tiny little things that we deal with on kind of a day to day basis that just aren't a concern for other people. They just never think about these things, right? And so part of my message is to be real and to be honest about what it's like and educate people and provide some hope.
Well, I was thinking about that actually. I was going to ask you about that because things that we take for granted, a lot of us, like getting up in the morning, going to the bathroom and brushing your teeth, right? Are
Yep.
things that you have to put thought and planning into. And that, Katie, has to take a toll on your mental health. So you have to be vigilant with not only the physical, but the emotional and the mental part of it as well, to not get down, to keep being hopeful.
Yep. It's absolutely true. As my disease progressed, there was a period of time when I was drinking and using substances. I got to the point where I couldn't get out of bed on my own anymore. I needed somebody to help lift me up in the bed, swing my legs over, and help me into my wheelchair. And I didn't have any in-home caregiving. So we found a neighbor who could stop by about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and get me out of bed. So I was in bed every day until 3 o'clock in the
Wow.
afternoon.
Wow.
And talk about depression. I mean,
Yeah.
just devastating. I have in home caregiving now, which has also changed my life, the in home caregiving and having therapy available. But it is hard. I can't just get up and go to the bathroom. It's about a 10-minute process to get me to the bathroom. We've made a lot of modifications to our home. We're very blessed. Josh has a good income, and that definitely helps. It makes it easier. But that's not the case for a lot of people with disabilities and a lot of people in wheelchairs. We're lucky in the sense other people live in pure poverty,
Mhm.
and that's hard to watch my friends struggling with those things.
Are you also, well, Joshua was telling me, for those of you who are interested, we interviewed Joshua a while back. You can listen to his podcast, a little different topic, but he was saying how some people are confused as far as what kind of insurance they have. Like in
Yes,
Alaska, right? Alaska, it's called Denali Care. I think in Wisconsin, Badger Care, but that's essentially Medicaid.
it is.
And
Yes.
people don't know that. So are you and others concerned, worried about funding decreases or additional hoops you would have to jump through to be able to get just the basic care?
Absolutely. Yeah, yes. I can say in the disability community right now, the fear is palpable.
Mm,
It is real and genuine. People are genuinely scared that they're not going to be able to receive their health care anymore. And in the House recently, they just passed a forget budget. It's not the budget resolution yet, but it's like the plan for how they want to reduce spending or increase spending for all of the various committees and departments, right? And Medicaid is under the something commerce. Anyway, I can't remember that part of it. But they part of the budget is that they want to slash $880 billion out of that particular pocket of money. And that's Medicaid.
Hmm.
That's Medicaid. And, there's still a lot that has to happen for that. And so I hope that it doesn't end up happening, but the Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the executive branch. And if they wanted to push that funding decrease through, they could.
People are important though, and we've seen some of that lately where people are like, whoa, 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 out loud, which is kind of
Yes.
interesting. But you also have gotten a lot of support. I know Joshua is really supportive, but is Carol your mom, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I okay. Sorry
Yeah.
to bring her up. I want to meet
No, it's
her.
good.
He seems like a pip.
Oh my gosh. She
Some of
is
her
such a
comments
character.
on social media are, boy, she's a little tiger.
Yes, she is. Yes, she is. It's really funny. She went on and got her master's degree in social work too, much later in life. But yeah, she's fierce and fiery.
Like
And
she was quick to like, boom, she took over the argument for you.
oh yeah, she did. Yeah. And I'm like, Mom, slow down. I told her,
Yeah, well, haven't we all said that at some point to our
I'm like,
parents?
Mom, like slow down. Like part of what I'm trying to do in my messaging with the Miss Wheelchair thing is do it in a way that everybody can hear the message.
Yes,
And so I don't want to jump
right.
into just the political divide and the arguing and that. I'm really trying to stay out of that because I want people, everybody, to be able to hear my message. But yeah, my mom, she just steps in and runs with it.
Well, I think we first heard an Alaskan woman talk about being a mama bear, so I think you're
Oh
on
my
both sides of
gosh,
the political spectrum there.
that is big time true.
Is she
Um,
coming with you to Ohio?
she's going to meet me there, I think. Yeah.
Really? That's great.
And my dad and my stepmom, they're really supportive too. They're not on social media. And so I'll send them little posts that I do. And they're very supportive too. And I'm hoping they'll be there as well.
I'm gonna obviously put a link to your stuff in here, but also a link to the Miss Wheelchair USA pageant and something called the Dane Foundation, where people can actually contribute and support those of you who are in competition for it. Tell us a little bit about the Ms. Right? Did I get there?
Yes,
Wheelchair
it's
USA
wheelchair.
competition.
Yeah, I, oh my gosh, I am enjoying it so much. So I put in an application. It's an application process essentially. And I was chosen to be Miss Wheelchair Alaska USA. And they sent me a crown and a sash.
Which you have
And
to
it
wear when you're out, right?
I have to wear when I'm out, yes, and it's very awkward. Like extremely awkward. All of us with our crowns, I think some of us are handling it better than others, but on a flight we are going to Hawaii and they announced it over the plane and everybody started clapping and I'm just
Oh,
like, "Oh my gosh, this is
that's
so
so good. No,
so
no, you
embarrassing."
need to get the princess wave down then.
Oh man. Yes. So Miss Wheelchair USA is a pageant for women with disabilities who use wheelchairs. There's thousands of pageants all over the place for everything, and only two pageants for women with disabilities who primarily use wheelchairs. And the Dane Foundation is a nonprofit started by the people who also run Miss Wheelchair USA. And they work in collaboration, the Dane Foundation and Miss Wheelchair USA. And the Dane Foundation really pushes the message of acceptance and accessibility and understanding. And they provide like day to day needs for people with all kinds of disabilities. Like if they need some socks and they can't afford socks, the Dane Foundation will find a way to get them some socks. And truly, the people who run those organizations do it purely out of love,
Yeah, I bet.
just just purely out of care for people who need help.
So when you get to Ohio, I assume there's interviews and stuff you have to do. Do you also get the opportunity to present your platform, which I believe is on mental health, right?
Yeah.
Do a little TED talk, as it were, maybe?
Yep, exactly. exactly. There's all kinds of things I'm trying to get ready for.
I was just going to ask you
Building.
where you're at with that process.
Oh my gosh. It's like, it just hit me. It's 3 months away. And I'm like, oh, I've got so much to do. Like, I haven't even thought about buying a dress yet, right? Like, I'm supposed to get a formal dress. And I'm like, oh my gosh, where the heck am I going to do that? I don't know. But yes, they have judges. There's a few different rounds of interviews. And then I've got 5-ish minutes on stage to talk about my platform, which is mental health. And I want to talk about two different things, but I've really got to pare it down. I'm not sure how I'm going to fit it all into 5 minutes. But what I want to talk about is how to reduce the risk of mental health trouble
Mm.
when you have a disability or in a chair or any kind of disability, right? There are things we can do to reduce that risk. And I want to talk about the reality of it. Like, people with disabilities are at much higher risk of having to deal with depression and anxiety. And it's just a reality, right? And then the other thing that I want to talk about is not how we can help ourselves, but pushing for systems change,
Mhm.
right? Like increasing access to mental health care, um, making sure that people with disabilities have the supports like the in-home caregiving that they need, making sure that people with disabilities have adequate transportation so they can get out of their house and go shopping, right? Like every day-to-day kinds of things. And those are larger policy pieces that are threatened right now. And I'm speaking up about that
Good
stuff.
for you. Because that hurts, Katie, that hurts nobody. Come on.
Yeah.
And as you said, there are some good things that did come out of COVID. And one of them was a sense of collaboration when people collaborate. But the other is that access to care. We have a lot of therapists who listen to this, and many who have been on who have been provided people care who wouldn't otherwise get it.
Yeah.
Alaska is not exactly an urban center where there's tons of treatment. So there's distant places where if they don't have the internet, they can't get medical care, let alone,
Mental health care. Yeah.
right,
It's absolutely a reality. I mean, most of Alaska is not connected to a road system.
right.
And so people get to their villages by flying or snow machine, and getting just even primary care out there is hard. And psychiatric care is like unheard of almost. I mean, it's so difficult to get anybody mental health treatment in those villages. But truly, I think COVID changed that, at least for mental health care.
Yeah, it's great. Well, Katie, I'll let people know, although they can follow you now too. So
Yes,
good luck in Ohio. I can't wait to see how it all goes.
I'm super excited. And I've been
Well, who wouldn't be?
developing friendships and relationships with the other gals too, which is great because I don't know any other women in a wheelchair. Like, it's just me
Wow.
up here. I mean, there are other women, but yeah, it's been great developing relationships with them too.
And I don't think you should be embarrassed at all. I know if somebody provided me with a crown and a sash, I'd be wearing it 24/7 until my friends and family would say, enough, Mike. So,
Okay, take it off now.
yeah, yeah, I'd wear it around the house. For those of you listening, there's links to the Dane Foundation and the Ms. Wheelchair competition attached to the podcast. Thanks, Katie.
Yeah,
This has been outstanding, and what an incredibly resilient person you are, inspiring. I
thank you.
hope I hope for all of you listening, you're able to listen anytime you're able. Until then, stay safe. And I think Katie would say this too. Stay informed.